Welcome to the Advanced Freelancing Podcast. Every week, you'll hear strategies for building your online service-based business your way. And now, here's your host, veteran freelancer, author, and TEDx speaker, Laura Briggs.
Hey, can you believe you're listening to episode 116 of the Advanced Freelancing Podcast? Well, you are, and my guest today is someone who's going to teach you all about search engine optimization. My guest today is Jason Berkowitz, and he's the founder and SEO director of Break the Web, an inbound digital marketing agency based in New York City. For over 6 years, he was a freelance SEO consultant until a natural transition led him to form his own boutique operation, which he operates his expertise out of today. If you've always been curious about either diving into SEO to be a consultant yourself, or you're a freelancer who wants to optimize your own website and SEO efforts, this episode is the one for you. Hey everybody, you are listening to another episode of the Advanced Freelancing Podcast, and my guest today is Jason. Thanks for coming on the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Laura. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to chat with you. Tell me a little bit about who you are, what you do, and how long you've been doing the services that you provide.
So I am a self-proclaimed SEO nerd or SEO weirdo, just because I think about SEO at times when I probably shouldn't. So my role is the SEO director at an inbound marketing agency called Break the Web. I'm also the founder of the agency, but I don't like putting those weird titles like founder or CEO on a small business that doesn't necessarily deserve those titles. So I primarily deal with the search engine optimization aspects and lead the SEO strategy for our clients.
That's awesome. Now, I know that most freelancers are in the space of online marketing, so they've at least heard of SEO. Can you kind of explain what that looks like for you? Like what specific things you're talking about when you use a term like SEO? Because I know what that means. I'm an SEO writer, but I think some of our audience might be like, oh, that sounds extremely technical and I don't want to have anything to do with it. So I'd love to just break it down for everybody.
Yeah, and that's because there's a lot of different moving parts to it, to an SEO strategy. Essentially, to sum it up, SEO is about increasing a website's organic visibility, their organic reach for people that go to Google, maybe for a specific intent. So if you have a page that hits home on a certain query that, of course, has a specific intent, with specific optimization strategies from both the on-site level, making sure that the website is thematically relevant, but also from the off-site level, making sure that good trust signals are going to the website, you can achieve organic domination, organic search presence, which of course will bring in more traffic, which if you have proper funnels set up, maybe more sales, leads, whatever the conversion KPI might be.
Perfect. Now, I think sometimes freelancers get tripped up with SEO because we think of it as being something that our clients have to worry about, but not us. And I'm always confused when I hear freelancers respond in that sort of way, like, well, there's no way that I can compete with SEO terms being a copywriter or a graphic designer. But the truth is that you can still implement a lot of SEO elements to your own website, and even in things that you wouldn't traditionally think of SEO being a part of, like the LinkedIn algorithm, those can still help you be found by clients who are interested in hiring you. So do you have any tips for a freelancer that's maybe building their first website for their freelance services and what they need to keep in mind for SEO purposes?
Yeah, absolutely. And you touched upon a great point. A lot of our partners, our partner agencies, is other agencies that we collaborate together are not in the SEO realm. They actually are in branding, maybe web development, web design. And they had a line item when they sold a project to make the website SEO friendly. And they just didn't really know what that meant. But the client, of course, wanted to have I'm doing air quotes, but a SEO ready website. And then they would hire us as kind of our smaller projects, but they would bring us on to help them launch an SEO focused website from the foundational level. So if a freelancer, for example, might be doing design and development, just understanding what's important from a foundational level in SEO could probably bring, even on the small scale, a couple of $100 extra in your pocket, just by even doing the small little details like making sure the canonical tags, again, is technical, but certain tags are set up correctly, making sure that even introductory keyword research was done so you know how to build out the pages focusing on which specific keywords and queries, making sure that, of course, everything has a unique page title, has a unique meta description, the header tags, on a simple level, just foundationally, developers can actually probably add another line item for an SEO focused website just by learning the foundational skills.
That's a great way to think about it. Now, if you're a freelancer who maybe doesn't have those development skills and you're hiring someone else to build your website, does it make sense to earmark a certain portion of your budget to hire an SEO specialist? Like, for some people, they're going to go, well, I don't know how to find those initial keywords, and I have no idea what a canonical tag is or a meta description. So should you be planning from the beginning to do something like that by working with someone who does know SEO?
Yeah, and an extremely biased answer would be yes, given that, of course, I'm in SEO, so I can't not biasly say yes, but it depends on the long-term vision. So most brands, especially when they are building out initially, they have a business plan, a model. That model, of course, would hopefully include a marketing and how they want to go about marketing. If SEO was top of mind in that marketing strategy, then absolutely. Because nothing's worse than spending money on development and you launch a new website. Then you have to kind of go back to the technical aspects again and optimize a little bit further for SEO. But if you can hit that right in the beginning, it can save a lot of stress down the road. So if SEO is top of mind early on, then yes. If, for example, the market is just too competitive, I was actually on another conference right before this in which somebody was talking about how they can't rank organically for hotels. And that's because, websites, platforms like Google is really trying to take over the hotel market with their Google Maps, with their extra features that they throw in the search engine results pages, so that it might not be accessible for them to implement SEO. It might not be realistic or worth their time versus other marketing strategies.
Right. I think that makes a lot of sense. And, if you are trying to have some of your traffic coming to you organically, I think it makes sense even just to have some of that basic level SEO, but it's not just for that purpose on your website. It also helps explain to your clients once they've landed there what it is that you do. So even if you are in a really competitive marketplace where you can't necessarily rank for some of those bigger keywords, maybe like copywriting or virtual assistant, you can still include those terms on your website. But does it make sense to narrow down, like a local business, of course, would be competing in a geographic area for SEO. Would a freelancer be better off thinking about, targeting particular industries with some of those more general keywords? Like, is there a way to narrow it down from that, first start of saying, okay, this is the service I offer, I'm a logo designer. Is there a way to build in some specificity that would work for SEO purposes?
It's very interesting. Maybe even outside of direct SEO purposes, maybe from a business standpoint, it's always been recommended that you will do better if you niche down to specific industries. What's very interesting is the times that we're in right now with coronavirus, that unfortunately niching down has actually been really bad for some freelancers and for some agencies that are in certain markets. I have a colleague of mine who only focuses on fitness, so gyms and personal trainers, and he lost almost
Right.
all of his clients during this. So outside of things, niching down can definitely be beneficial, whether you're targeting local or national. I think, yeah, it comes down to the competition and where your ideal client might be hanging out. Are you trying to bring in national clients, or do you want to make a name for yourself in the local area? Are you
Right.
in a metro city like New York City? Then it might make sense to go locally because there's endless opportunities. But if you're in maybe middle America in a smaller community, you might not have that same reach. And it might be better to either go to the closest metro city and try to target there. Or if you do have the resources, the patience, and the willpower, then probably go national. That would be a great recommendation.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's a really, good point about different niches can be affected by different things. I mean, you have niches that can even be affected seasonally. So let's say that you love
Mhm.
writing about, Christmas. Of course, that's, there's plenty of businesses that target on that, but that only happens certain times of the year. And I know another industry that's been hit really hard right now is hospitality and travel. So I know several writers who typically that's where their bread and butter is. They write about travel and travel tips. And some of those smaller companies have already gone under. And so it's always a good idea, even when you do niche, to have a handful of niches so that you can always pivot relatively easily into something else if things, come up or change, or things are dramatically different within that market. So let's shift gears a little bit and talk about, you started out as an individual. Can you talk a little bit about your transition from working as an individual freelancer to deciding, okay, I've really got to build an agency here and have it look like that in that particular structure?
Yeah, so I originally became an SEO freelancer because I had a previous business that was failing to grow online, and I was tired of outbound marketing and hustling and cold calling and all these weird things that I wanted people to come to me. So it made sense to learn about SEO. And that's where my passion for SEO started. And I'm like, oh, I did this for myself. I can do this for others. And I started freelancing. I freelanced for about 6 years. We have still, I think we have a lead generation site right now, which is ranking for New York SEO search queries. So I was able to bring in new leads to my freelance business. But the thing was, it was just a weird natural transition. I found myself doing more than I could handle, and I needed to delegate out. So then I started bringing on some virtual assistants, some VAs, and some other smaller roles that can help me with the day-to-day tasks. And then when you start learning about business and how to manage things, you get more tasks like operations and admin stuff and uh, marketing yourself, profits, and all these different things that you need to be aware of that I continue to delegate out. And before you know, you actually have a little small agency and you don't even realize it. You're not really technically a freelancer anymore. And that's where we were. And it was at that moment where I decided, hey, we are a small agency, so to speak. I'm kind of the face of the website. Might as well just transition and go to an agency style and in a way give myself a bit more security, I guess, financially, but also more risks involved too, because a lot more risk going, I think, also from freelance to business owner.
You hit on something really important there, which is I think a lot of times we think of freelancing and agency ownership as the only two options. And so you're the solopreneur who's doing absolutely everything, or you have this massive multi-million-dollar agency with 300 employees. And there's a lot of room in between, right? Like you can still make your freelance venture look like what you want it to. I and many other writers, we don't like outsourcing to other writers, but there's lots of things that I outsource in my business and delegate to virtual assistants and other contractors because it helps me be more efficient. And you can choose what the structure of your agency looks like and how that really benefits you. And I think it's also a testament to you being successful when you get to the point where you're going, hey, there's too much work here for me to be doing by myself. And part of the other challenge of that is a lot of freelancers at this point of going, if I went on vacation for a week and I'm the only person doing the actual work for the client, I either have to work way ahead or there's going to be no money coming in during that particular week or something like that. And so having an agency gives you a little bit of that extra buffer and that extra support as well. Are you curious about how to get started working as a search engine optimization writer? Always loved writing, but don't understand the technical elements? No worries, you can easily teach yourself. And this podcast episode is sponsored by the Advanced SEO Writing for Freelancers and Bloggers course. You can learn more all about how to choose keywords, how to pick topics for your clients, how to complete a content strategy audit, and how to write a fully optimized SEO piece of content writing that you can sell for $50 and up. Check out tinyurl.com/advanced SEO writer to learn more about this course and to enroll. So yeah, I'd love to talk to you. There's kind of a perception, and I'll admit I fall victim to this a little bit, that certain freelance services are super hard to do because they're changing all the time. So examples would be Google ads, Facebook ads, and even SEO, because we don't know everything that goes into Google's algorithm, and we know that they're always testing and tweaking it. Do you find it to be a challenge to be in an industry it's in high demand, but you also have to be highly knowledgeable in terms of the technical expertise to be an SEO expert? Is that a challenge?
In a way, yes, but I'm crazy in that I love the challenge. I find it as a fun and exciting challenge. And I see it from the perspective of this. If you have an idea on what they want as a brand, so if you have an idea on what Google wants for their organic results down the road, it allows you to not be surprised by changes and why it makes sense they make certain changes. So if they release an update that's focusing on websites that have certain levels of trust, clearly it makes sense because we know that Google's number one goal first is making money through ads. But number two, matching intent and answering people's questions. So it makes sense that they want proper answers, trustworthy websites appearing. These updates that come out, it doesn't really surprise me anymore. It used to, maybe about a decade ago. Nowadays, I'm kind of interested in the challenge, and I'm kind of interested to see what they have. And from the agency side of things, we're easily able to adopt or adapt and evolve the way we do things if something new comes out. So I can't speak from the paid advertising side of things with PPC and social media. While we do offer those services, I kind of stay out of that department. But from the SEO side of things, to me at least, again, a SEO weirdo, it's a fun challenge.
Yeah, I think it totally depends on your personality. And it's another great thing that goes back to that concept of specializing in more than one service, not to the point where you overwhelm
Mhm.
yourself, but a handful of things or a handful of industries, because maybe you have to be up to speed on SEO. And I mean, that's one aspect that I liked about it as an SEO writer, is that it was in such high demand that clients were always asking about it. And they would never just get on a call and say, I want this many blog posts per month, and these are the keywords I've done. They really come to you as a strategist. And so when you are in the position of offering some of these more specialized services that evolve quickly, like the advertising, like SEO, other technical elements, I'm imagining like web development and mobile app development are probably the same. The technology changes so quickly that you always have to be ahead of the curve. You can often bring in more money because essentially clients see you as a strategist or a consultant. You're not just the doer of the task. They ask you questions. You know, a lot of times my clients would come to me and say, well, I heard on blah, blah, blah webinar that I should be doing this for SEO. What do you think? You know, and so you're put in that position of consultant to not just do the service, but also tell them, hey, this is what I'd recommend you do next, or this is the strategy you're doing that I think is, you know, hindering you from getting better results. Do you think that being in that role of, you know, self-proclaimed SEO nerd, has that helped you sort of brand yourself as an expert in that market?
Yeah, it's pretty much what you just said. If somebody comes up to you and says, "I was under the impression I need to do this XYZ for SEO," and you say, it's it's a little bit different." I see from a sales standpoint, and I'm like the world's worst salesman, but from a sales point, it's really good. I call it myth busting. You know, myth bust through the myths in SEO and teach them what's really going on. No fighting objections or doing all these weird persuasive selling techniques. Just genuinely providing value that, of course, is not proprietary to you. Value that any Google search would really show them how to go about things. It works really well. It's a great value proposition for you to myth bust and teach them the proper route on how to go about things.
Absolutely. Now, do you ever get in the difficult position of clients wanting to pay you based on results, or for you to give them a guarantee of certain results? And if you come up against that, how do you deal with that with your clients or prospective clients?
My response is typically, I don't think we might be the right company for you, which sucks because
I
you never
like
really
that.
want to turn down business. No one ever wants to turn down revenue. But, we have a small team here. And the last thing I want to do is put pressure on our account strategists or account managers by giving them a very horrible client to work with in that we couldn't manage their expectations up front. So again, if somebody wants a guarantee in results, that is impossible. We're reliant on a third party platform. Google can shut down tomorrow, and that's beyond all of our control. We know when they're not going to, but especially with algorithms we're kind of in the dark about, we can't really give those type of guarantees and pay for performance. I haven't heard pay for performance, to be honest with you, since I got out of freelancing. That I think is what brands like to do to take advantage of freelancers. And it's unfortunate. And I hope that freelancers do stay strong because nothing's worse than not getting paid for a crappy client.
I think you're absolutely right. And I think some of it is brands that are trying, well, some of it is brands that are trying to take advantage of freelancers. Some of it is companies that have been promised the world in the past
Hmm.
and the company
Hmm.
didn't deliver. And so they're trying to safeguard themselves, right, in that particular way. And some of it is just about expectations, right? Like living in the world of SEO. If a client asks you, well, how many leads can I expect from my website 30 days from now once you implement what you're saying? That's not how it works, right? And that's not how it works when I put together book marketing proposals or publicity proposals. As much as you might think that, within 10 days we can get you on, a webinar with Gary Vee and he's promoting you to his audience, it's just not realistic. It's often the slow, steady, consistent work that makes things be really effective. So some of it is about setting those expectations with your clients too, of, I'm also not in control of so many things on your website. So if your website is colored lime green and yellow and has flashing big ugly text on it, and I told you to fix it and you didn't, don't blame your SEO results or your web development results or speed or anything on me, because there's elements of that process that I'm not responsible for as well.
Yeah. And especially from a business standpoint, if you're a freelancer, maybe with 1 to 3 virtual assistants, you have operating costs. And you would hope that your client has enough business savvy that they would understand that, yeah, you have operating costs from the second they start working on your campaign, there are costs associated with it.
Right. And I think because online marketing has gotten so competitive recently that we have to tell our clients what they can expect realistically, that it's better
Mhm.
to invest and be consistent. And there really are no overnight successes. They've heard these stories on webinars. Oh, I did this and I made 6 figures overnight, or my website was listed on Google, after 2 weeks. A lot of those things are just fluff and, designed to catch your attention and do what they did, have you thinking about it. But a lot of the more successful companies are doing the slow and steady build to get things really running with their online marketing. So never feel like you have to, you're going to lose a client if you don't offer them some type of a guarantee. I've noticed, thankfully, at least on my end, that has gone down quite a bit. I've had less companies asking me about that. But then again, last week, someone asked me to do a proposal with, how many books that they could sell based on what I was proposing. And I said in like multiple ways, like, that's not really how this works. And I don't get, like, what if your book is awful? Like, I'll promote it as much as I can, but if it's a bad book and people don't want to read it, I can't really affect
Yeah.
that. So it's about setting those client expectations a little bit. So you're an SEO expert. You love learning about this stuff and talking about it. If there's someone listening to this episode that's saying, I need to learn a little bit more about SEO, either for my own website or because maybe this is a new service that I could potentially offer, where should somebody start with learning something technical like that?
I think probably the same place I start. Just start asking questions in Google search. And of course, you are reliant and hoping that that information is accurate, but test it out. Build a small website. If you're thinking about offering SEO, just get right in the trenches. Build a small website just to test out the SEO strategies. Find something that's not competitive, like some random service in some random town in America, and just try to rank that website using the tactics that you're reading online. And that's the great thing about it, is that at the end of the day, the strategies or the philosophies behind SEO are not secretive. A lot of agencies, SEO specialists, and of course, people are trying to sell SEO courses. My proprietary method about SEO, which is really not that secretive. On-page SEO, good thematic relevancy, and good trust signals in the form of links. Those are pretty much sums it up what you need to do from an SEO perspective. Of course, each has their own little technicalities behind it, but understanding what's involved with SEO, the different aspects, the different terminology, the lingo, the different execution strategies, and then just taking action on it, trying it out, of course, and even getting a client that if they decide that it didn't work out, it's not a big loss to you. You can start honing your skills and getting better and better from what you're learning just by going yourself in the trenches. There's a lot of good free resources, blogs, articles out there.
Yeah, educating yourself on an ongoing basis is a great way to learn something new. And thankfully, we live in an age where we have access to many, many resources. So I love the fact that you mentioned set this up for yourself and test it, because that's always the next thing that a freelancer says when they're doing a new service. Well, how am I going to get any clients when I haven't ever done this before? Do it for yourself. If you're an email newsletter writer, set up your own email newsletter funnel, test it, and use those metrics as your case study, or talk with your first couple of clients about, your marketing strategies that got 400 people to register for a webinar from a cold traffic Facebook ad. Always use it for something that can be dual purpose for you. So if you need to build your freelance website anyways, and you're thinking about, hey, I'm a little interested in SEO, but I don't want to commit all the way yet, a great way to at least get grounded in it is to use those SEO principles that Jason mentioned to build your own website, to start building out your own resource pages and blogs. Think about the way that people search and the way that you use search engines like Google to answer questions or to get help with a common problem, because you might be unique in some ways, but most of us think relatively similar. That's Google's job, is to figure out what all of us are asking that is related in similar terms and things like that. So you don't feel like you need to dive too deep into the weeds there with that type of process. So to close things out, I would love to know where people can go to learn a little bit more about you and some of the services that you offer.
Yeah, we can be found either a simple Google search, Break the Web, Jason Berkowitz. Again, our URLs are breaktheweb.agency, jasonberkowitz.com. Pretty much just go to Google. You got to practice what we preach, so pretty visible.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your time coming on the show and for chatting with me. It's really been helpful, and I think it will be helpful for my audience to not be so stumped around the general idea of SEO and even just like deciding to move from freelancer to agency. So we covered a lot of really interesting things in this episode.